Hello, welcome along to the Motorbike Racing Show. It's Thursday the 14th of March 2024. Coming up, we've got Julian Ryder.
John Surtees is one of the most significant figures in all of motorsport. End of statement.
We've got Yari Montella.
The fastest lap in race 1 for race 2, it's interesting. What I don't like it too much is the format on Friday.
And all of the latest news from across the world in motorcycle racing. Oh, and by the way, if you missed it last week...
I'm an action man. I mean, I really like the action.
I gotta say, you look like an action man on all these Instagram things. You keep posting these videos, looking in the mirror in the gym.
I didn't want to say that. Not in that way.
That was Paul Espargaro ahead of his debut in MotoGP as a television pundit. Well, you can catch up with that Paul Espargaro interview and all of the other episodes of the Motorbike Racing Show on your favourite podcast platforms. Get in touch on social media. Some questions coming up later on in the show, actually. Greg Haines TV on X and on Instagram. The email address is TalkingAwayPodcast@gmail.com. And you can also now listen to the show as well as reading motorcycle news in 6 different languages on motorcyclesports.net. We're delighted to announce our partnership with them. So let's get straight into the news for Thursday the 14th of March. Get ready for an explosion of MotoGP in America. That's according to Dan Rossomondo, Dorna's Chief Commercial Officer for MotoGP. Dan is an American and he previously worked for the NBA, the National Basketball Association in the States. And now with his whole family, he's relocated to Madrid over the last year or so, where Dorna's administrative headquarters is based. In an interview recently with CNN, Rossomondo says that MotoGP is a sleeping giant and that there's plenty of new riders and ideas on the table for this 75th anniversary season. In recent times, the American Trackhouse Racing team has debuted on the grid. They're based in Nashville and co-owned by the rapper Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide. And as we said here on the show last week, American TV is now using the TNT Sports programme from the UK to get the full build-up and rundown shows as well as all of the track action. Rossomondo said, I have 3 children, 14, 16 and 18, and I know their attention spans. The 24-minute sprint on Saturday is a trial for the main 45-minute Grand Prix on Sunday, and it's been wildly successful, leading to over 20% global growth in our TV viewership. And of course, there's plenty of rumours still doing the rounds, aren't there, about Liberty Media and MotoGP in the future, so we'll have to just watch this space. Incidentally, the MotoGP 24 game is available for pre-order, released on the 2nd of May, if you're interested. Gigi Dell'Igna now on Marc Marquez, and he's described him as a fearsome contestant on a bike that is completely new to him, quoted there in an article recently on Crash.net. Marquez was 5th in the Qatar Sprint and 4th in the Grand Prix, which leaves him 4th in the championship. Since last winning it in 2019, he failed to score through injury in 2020, with 7th in 2021, 13th in 2022 and 14th in 2023. So Marc Marquez now the dizzy heights of 4th in the Riders' Championship, and the full standings coming up towards the end of the show. His brother Alex, in the meantime, insists that he needs to improve in qualifying, as he only was 9th on the grid in Qatar and struggled therefore in the races. In better news, both Marquez brothers have just got their hands on new Audi road cars thanks to sponsorship, and of course Audi is also the owner of Ducati. Alex has an RS4 which is valued at over £70,000, and Mark an RS6 Avant, which Crash.net says is worth 115,000 quid before any customization is involved. It's all right for some, but thoroughly deserved, Mr. Marquez. Motorsport.com are talking about Ducati's salaries in one of their articles, saying it could affect Jorge Martin's future. There's been cuts since Andrea Dovizioso left a few years ago, reducing spending at Ducati by half. The new 2-year Francesco Bagnaia deal at an estimated €10 million if he wins the championship is obviously impressive, but Ducati are not prepared to do that for others. A source has told Motorsport from within Ducati cannot be paying a base of €2 million to a satellite team rider. Info from Jake Dixon. Thank goodness he's had no broken bones. It hurt not to be on the grid for the first race, but my health comes first, he says. And he is undergoing more checks in Qatar this coming Sunday. He confirmed in an Instagram post earlier on today. Of course, Dixon had that awful practice crash in Doha at the weekend, that huge high side. But at least his Aspar team was able to celebrate victory in the Moto3 class with the ever-improving and mightily impressive David Alonso. Philip Salac is another one in the wars. He's just had arm pump surgery on his right forearm. The Mark VDS rider finished 21st in the Moto2 Grand Prix of Qatar, which I guess, under the circumstances, wasn't too bad for the Czech rider. Now, talking of Moto2 and Moto3, I've been having a chat in the last few days with Giorgio Barbier, who is the boss for Pirelli in terms of tyres, about why there were so many incredibly dramatic results with the likes of Fermin Aldeguer all the way down the field outside the points, and so was Tony Arbolino, two title favourites. And Giorgio was telling me that the aggressive surface and the humidity at night time in the hours of darkness really did scupper people there. They had the rain as well, didn't they, if you remember, on Friday, which stopped people from putting in some pretty proper race pace runs. They only got about 7 laps in on race tyres before they all thought about single lap pace in practice on Saturday. And Giorgio also said another problem they're having at the moment is the new tyre supplier after 13 odd years with Dunlop, which are much, much harder tyres with, as everyone said, pretty much no grip. Now they've got the really, really soft Pirellis with as much grip as you could ever imagine. But the Moto2 bikes are very light, very rigid, stiff prototype frames, very different, of course, to the Superbikes and the Supersport bikes that Pirelli are more used to dealing with. And they're carrying a lot of corner speed. They're sliding more. They don't pick up the bike like they do with a Superbike. You see the Superbike riders picking the bike up to get it on the fat part of the tyre, the centre part of the tyre, as soon as they can for drive grip off the corners. It's different in Moto2. They're carrying corner speed. They're on the lean angle for a lot longer. So quite a few issues, but it really did shake things up, didn't it, earlier on in the week with that Qatar Grand Prix, an absolutely spectacular start to proceedings for Moto2 and Moto3 this year. We'll get the full results later on. New feature now for the Motorbike Racing Show over the next few episodes, because last Sunday, the 10th of March, marked the 7-year anniversary of the passing of John Surtees in 2017, succumbing to a respiratory condition. And not just that, but 2024 marks 60 years since the great man in 1964 went down in history by winning the Formula One World Championship title for Ferrari. John Surtees, CBE, OBE, and MBE. Not only had he won the Formula One World title for Ferrari, but he'd backed up his 7 Grand Prix motorcycle racing crowns, 5 in the 500cc category, 2 in the 350cc category. And in 1960, he was racing both bikes and cars, would you believe, in the same season. John Surtees is an absolute legend. Let's hear him in action.
For 30 miles of the course, they've had their brakes hard on. Yet, the winner's average speed is 102.44 miles per hour. And John Surtees is winner of the TT Senior event for the 3rd time in succession. 300 riders during practice and races covered 100,000 miles over this mountainous course at speeds reaching 140 miles per hour. And yet there wasn't one serious accident.
There was the great man on the Isle of Man, and here he is at the wheel of a 1960s Honda V12 Formula One car. Well, you could listen to that all day, couldn't you? But we're not going to listen to that. We are going to listen, though, to Julian Ryder, friend of mine and broadcaster and journalist, who was actually very fortunate to meet the great man. Here he is in our first Surtees Stories. It's Julian Ryder. So, Julian, 60 years then since 1964 when Surtees won that Formula One world title for Ferrari to back up his 7 crowns in Grand Prix racing for motorcycles. 5, of course, in the Premier class between 1956 and 1960, and a man who you actually met in person as well.
I was lucky enough to once or twice, yes. He wasn't, certainly in his earlier years, the most accessible of people. He was a private individual. He was quite prickly, and he didn't enjoy the publicity side of things. You know, it wasn't his idea of fun.
He was in many ways the quintessential Englishman, wasn't he?
It was interesting. He was, from ordinary blue-collar background. But certainly, if you talk to an Italian, or, they think, oh, yes, he was an English gentleman. He ascended the social scale as well as the sporting scale.
Yeah, and you've obviously come across a lot of races in your time, Jules, and we know they can be very self-centered, very selfish at times. Now, John Surtees doesn't strike me as like that, although I have heard otherwise, and you'll know better than me.
He was like all other racers, and there were fewer racers as focused, as capable, and as determined as John Surtees. And on occasion, it showed. I will say that after the birth of his son, Henry, he appeared to be quite a different individual, much softer, much happier, frankly.
Yeah, that really was one of the great tragedies, wasn't it, of motor racing in recent times? The loss of Henry in 2009 at the age of 19.
That was just vile.
Yeah, for it to happen to anyone is appalling, but to the Surtees family as well, it just seemed like such a cruel twist, didn't it? Considering as well that John himself had escaped, with the exception of that one terrible accident he had in Canada. He'd got through his motorcycle career in a very dangerous era. Okay, hadn't he? So for that to happen to Henry was absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, absolutely. And his motorcycling career, again, was beautifully controlled, wasn't it? Yes, he was on the best motorbike. Of course he was. But as the saying goes, you still have to ride it.
Yeah.
And he developed it as well, let's not forget. He was people forget he was an absolutely excellent engineer. He really was good at developing machinery.
It is interesting, actually, isn't it? Because the story goes that John felt he could win the championship in the mid-50s with Norton, but their board, I believe, weren't keen on the fact that a rider would be earning more than they would. So then he went off to speak to Count Augusta, didn't he?
Well, I think there was also, and I don't know if this is true or not. So let me say this could be one. Yeah, let me just flag this up, that he was waiting for BMW.
Ah, okay.
Who probably him and Zeller, I would assume. Do I mean Zeller post-war? Yes, I do, don't I? And in typical BMW fashion, the decision was never made. So he got fed up waiting, and MV was there.
Yeah, well, it certainly seemed to pay off, didn't it? That was the bike to be on at the time. I mean, let's just think about this, Julian. The fact we had one rider or driver winning what is now MotoGP and Formula One. I just can't see how that could ever happen again now, the way things are with the length of the calendars and sponsorship obligations. It's such a special... I mean, John has to go down, whether or not people rate him as one of the greatest riders or drivers, certainly as a person an achievement. I mean, that is, which he was. But what an incredible achievement. And it happened so quickly as well, relatively speaking.
Relatively speaking, when he was like Jeff Duke, he dabbled in car racing while he was still racing motorcycles. Bill Ivey as well. I think certainly because there was money being waved around at the to do that, as well as that natural curiosity of the racer and looking for the next move. I mean, Surtees, how many motorcycle Grand Prix a year were there for most of his? 6, 7, 8?
Yeah, good point.
Certainly single figures, I'd think. But you made your money on the international races. But the point is, for this to happen now, somebody like a Valentino Rossi would have to win the Moto Grand Prix title in the first year or two. of his career in the class, and then immediately transfer to cars.
Yes, no, actually, you were right at the heart, weren't you, of that era too? Just tell us about that, Jules. How close was Rossi? What was the feeling in the MotoGP paddock at the time? How close was Rossi to that Ferrari drive?
Good question. Formula One would have... The thing I am pretty sure about is that obviously Mr. Eccleston and F1 would have loved to have had it.
Yeah.
You know, that is all the political heft wanted him to go to F1. And there's no doubt he was thinking about it, that it was he wasn't rejecting the idea. I can't say that he was considering it totally seriously. But my understanding is that while he was fast, and he was fast, and could have been faster, he didn't think he could go there and win in the time scale necessary. I
saw an interview with Rossi actually fairly recently in which he said, I think he was offered a Minardi drive, but not the actual Ferrari drive that he would have wanted.
That as well, that they would have stuck him in a satellite team.
Yeah.
And he wasn't particularly interested in that. He was rather interested in winning more world championships.
Yeah, well,
there would have been money, but money was never a particular Valentino drive. You know, it was he was happy with what he was getting. He didn't like being undervalued, of course, but it wasn't the prime drive.
John Surtees, then, you've met him in person. What was he like to meet then? Was he the friendly, quintessential Englishman, or did he have the edge, or was this later when he'd stopped racing anyway?
Later in life, he was a really, really pleasant, almost outgoing person.
Yeah.
But you were still, you were always just, well, you didn't want to make an idiot of yourself in front of a multiple world champion, did you, either? You know, and he had a track record of not suffering fools, well, not gladly, actually not at all. You know, so there was a little bit of that, but he was quite brilliant to talk to when he decided he wanted to talk to you. When there was a feature, I think, in one of the first ever issues of Classic Bike magazine, I think done with Mike Nix, the journalist he got on with, okay. And it was just John Surtees. It was almost a transcription of John Surtees talking you round a lap of the Isle of Man.
Ah, lovely.
It was about 6 pages of the magazine. And literally just about all, you know, watch the manhole cover, you know, tree on the left-hand side, clip the stone wall, just talking around the whole damn place. It was an astonishing thing to read.
Yeah, I just hope the kids of today, now I'm going to sound really old here, Jules, but I just hope they appreciate the achievement of Surtees. Thank you very much. It's nice to hear.
Well, I think, Greg, you've only got to say how likely is it that, let's take Pedro Acosta, that he'll win a Formula One World Championship.
Yeah, no, he would be the example, wouldn't he? He's a good example to use. He's just started. You know, he could easily win the MotoGP Championship quite soon. Yeah, but, you know, you just can't see him ever going to F1 as well, can you?
It just doesn't quite... I don't know whether it's like motorbike racing. If he wanted to do that, he should have been in karts when he was 6, you know, and then working his way up the... I don't know. I don't know enough about cars. But that's exactly the sort of thing. You'd have to go to Pedro Acosta, who won in the first couple of years of his Moto Grand Prix career, and then took the bait to go and drive F1. And then most of, you know, everybody who's been given a chance, every motorcycle racer who's been given a chance to drive an F1 car has, of course, leapt at it. But it's normally like an end-of-season jolly, isn't it? Sponsors.
Yeah, and you have to think a Red Bull or a Monster or somebody would think this could be an unbelievable PR opportunity for that to happen. But I guess it's more complicated than that.
It's more complicated than that. Yeah. I mean, Rossi certainly weighed up the possibilities, but my understanding, not from Valentino, but from what he's intimated, hinted at, and what people around him have said, is that he was interested, but he wasn't interested in, as you say, doing a couple of years in a satellite car and not winning a race for 3 years. You know, no interest.
Yeah, which ironically actually is almost what happened on the Ducati, dare I say it anyway, Jules, but maybe I shouldn't get into that.
Well, quite, yes. We'll draw a veil over that one.
Yeah.
There's plenty of car racers who know their way around motorbikes, certainly in the classic era. And more recently, I suppose, Damon Hill, who was no slouch on two wheels before he decided to follow in the family tradition.
Yeah, his mother Betty stopped him, didn't she? Because it was just too dangerous.
Yeah, there was. Yes. Didn't she fund him to go to the racing school or something like that?
Yeah, to go and do
something like
Formula
that.
1600 or something. Yeah.
I apologise if I've got that one wrong. And my memory of I got something wrong years ago about Damon Hill. I got it completely, and I was rather embarrassed. That was what comes of relying on the memory rather than going and looking it up, Yeah,
but I suppose
I'm sensitive on that subject.
And I suppose the older we all get as well, the more memory we've got, haven't we? But there you go.
I do like to get the reference books out before I write something down.
Yeah.
For public consumption. I do like to check things nowadays a little more thoroughly than I used to.
I'm guessing you don't miss the travel, because you've told me this before. That was the number one reason for stopping. Do you miss being in the paddock, though?
Yes. I mean, especially the first race of the year tends to give you a twitch. Although that does wear off fairly quickly. Yeah, I've got no intention of getting on an aeroplane and going anywhere for work. I did 20 odd years, Greg. I did my time.
Yeah, and it is, as great as it is exhausting, isn't it? And especially now, the 21 race calendar we have, it was 22 originally. That's a long, that's a way of life, isn't it? They're long haul trips as well, many of them.
Yeah, and I think if you're in your 20s or 30s, like a lot of the, when I used to do the GPs, they, certainly the technical crews, and the studio and people and camera people, it's probably, when you're that age, it's great. It's fantastic. But, because it turns into your social life as well. But when you get a bit, a few years older, the novelty has worn off.
No, it is a commitment, that is for sure. What did you make of it, Julian? We've got Acosta we've just touched on. You want to be on a Ducati there, don't you? Surely, MotoGP again in 2024.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Although, I've got a sneaking Brad Binder feeling.
Yeah, he did well, didn't he? He did very well.
Well, it looks like he can do more on the brakes than he could last year with the bike. And no doubt there were other, little things. But Binder, he's always been great fun to watch from a safe distance. And he looks like he's got an improved motorcycle, and he's going really well. I mean, the ludicrous thing now is I spent some time watching Qatar, going down the list. Where's the first Japanese bike then? It's, so weird. You're probably into double figures before you find Quattararo or Zarco.
Yeah, and I can't see any obvious solution to this, can you? I just can't see how they're going to turn this around with the way the Italians are going at the moment. I mean, who would have imagined the Japanese would be in a situation like they are now?
And the Austrians.
Well, and the Austrians, I shouldn't forget them.
Yeah, definitely not. No, I've no idea. Is it electronics? Is it aero? What is it? I read lots, and you read what's wrong, what riders say doesn't work on the Honda, and I've been out in the paddock 5 years?
Yeah,
and it's almost like the sport has changed completely. I mean, I do prefer to see motorcycles. I think Terry Reimer said this the other day on X, that he likes to watch motorcycles that dip at the front and put the front wheel up, when the weight distribution changes. That doesn't happen in Moto Grand Prix anymore. They sort of clamp themselves to the floor or whatever. It's odd. They don't resemble what I would recognise as a motorcycle.
They're big bikes as well, aren't they? I obviously used to commentate on superbikes. They're long, and it sort of dwarfs the Ryder, doesn't it? They're big bikes now.
It's and you could argue, of course, quite rationally and quite sensibly, that it is Moto Grand Prix. They're not meant to be street bikes.
Yeah, exactly.
They're meant to be pushing the boundaries of the envelope. So carry on, boys. And you can't go to, Gigi Dall'Igna and say, how dare you make things faster? It's ridiculous.
Exactly, yeah. Well, it must be tricky for the FIM and Dorna because they want to improve the show, don't they? Increase the braking distances, make it more possible to overtake. But at the same time, you can't sort of punish the manufacturers for their genius, can you? And people like Dall'Igna in particular.
No. I mean, that's what Gigi Dall'Igna and the others' job is, to look at the rule book and find the loopholes. That's what they've always done. And that's what they'll continue doing. Ride height devices may be bannable without too much of a problem. But once you let the aerodynamic cat out the bag, I don't understand how you get it back in. I really don't.
Finally, Jules, because I know people will be very interested to hear from you as they don't get to hear you on the TV anymore. Just how good is Pedro Acosta? You've seen Rossi. I think you've commentated on pretty much all of Rossi's career, certainly all of Marquez's career. How good is Pedro Acosta? How long is it going to be till he wins the MotoGP world title?
Well, let's think of people who've made that sort of impression that young as they come into the class. I think Jorge Lorenzo, was on pole for his first three? Yes. Or something like that. Yeah. Again, I haven't got the books in front of me, Greg, so you're relying on a fading memory here. So let me let me say, if I've got the numbers slightly wrong, I apologise. Marquez came in. It took Rossi half the season he won in at Donington, didn't he?
Yeah.
Was his first one. It's he's showing all the signs, is Acosta, of being up there with those guys. So immediately, once you're bracketing somebody with Rossi, Lorenzo and Marquez, I mean, what more do you want? What more can you say? He is what this season needed, because with the bikes being so close and difficult to overtake and, maybe the show isn't what it needs to be, you need a Pedro Acosta in there, don't you? But I have to say that World Superbike the last couple of years, and looks like this year, is going to have me hiding behind Surtees most of the time. There's some terrifying stuff going on there.
Australia. I mean, I know it's Phillip Island, and I know I would say this because I'm working there at the moment, but racing goes in cycles, doesn't it? You have some great BSB seasons.
Absolutely.
And some more processional ones, MotoGP, World Superbikes. But yes, I have to say, World Superbikes is pretty incredible at the moment.
And it was a reminder that Phillip Island is the best racetrack in the world.
Absolutely.
As well, just to, doesn't do any harm to start the season there, does it? That's the way to get the saliva glands working overtime.
Yeah, and it's great that we have that. It's like a coup, isn't it, really, to have it at the end of February and ahead of everything else as well. Yeah. What about Andrea Iannone, by the way? I was thinking of you the other day. I thought, I bet Jules is getting excited about this, knowing, all the races we had for Iannone in the Grand Prix. Incredible.
Remember Iannone round Phillip Island? Exactly. He was brutally fast in Moto Grand Prix round there. 2015, and he absolutely mugged Valentino, I think, on the last lap.
As well as the Seagull.
As well as the Seagull. Andrea Iannone's won at the top level. And if, an Andrea Iannone with a chip on his shoulder is going to be combative. And I was surprised, though, he was as quick as he was.
Yeah, I have to say.
I didn't think he'd be slow, but that was a surprise.
It did make everyone else look a little bit silly, I thought. James Townsend and I were chatting about that after the fact he's come back from a 4-year ban and was in the lead of the race into the first corner was, unbelievable.
Yes. That is where, if you are one of the regulars, you might feel mildly embarrassed.
No, it was absolutely amazing. I can't wait to see what happens next week now in Barcelona, because that's going to be a better test, isn't it? Long races, tyre wear. That's going to be a true test. I think it's going to be
on a track that can be a tyre conservation race, can't it? Certainly in Moto Grand Prix. We shall see. But again, it's a place that Iannone's been to, of course. He knows it. You can't believe that Ducatis are going to be shy in retiring.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
And it's what Toprak can. Again, I'm looking at Toprak and the BMW, and I was being sarky about BMW earlier, back in the Surtees era, and I get the same sense of irritation. And why haven't they won anything yet? It's BMW, for God's sake, you should have worked this out by now. And it's the distance between Toprak and the next BMW, which I think is an interesting figure to keep an eye on.
I remember you saying this to me when we did some World Superbike commentaries together back in 2020, 21 sort of time. That BMW thing. Isn't it funny, Jules, how the culture of these companies never seems to change? The way the Japanese are very set in their ways. BMW seems to promise a lot and then not deliver. Let's hope that does change. But it is funny how a lot of this stuff has been that way forever and seems to just carry on the same.
I mean, yeah, if the John Surtees story about sitting there waiting for the letter from Munich and getting fed up and going and giving in to Count Augusta is true, history repeats itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, isn't it? Well, there we go. Well, we'll have to see what happens over the next few weeks. But I'm glad all's good for you, Jules. And are you, by the way, are you still doing the train sets? You're a bit of a train set enthusiast, if I'm not mistaken?
No, not trains, mate. Tin toys, clockwork.
Oh, it's tin toys.
Airfix. No, it's something. The old train sets is something I know nothing about. It's a massive area all on its own, out of my area of expertise.
I can imagine you doing that, actually. Do you not fancy getting into it?
No. I've got enough on my plate.
I thought you might say that. Well, Jules, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. And yes, let's see what happens. How long is it going to be till Acosta wins a Grand Prix? And can Toprak do anything with that BMW? But John Surtees, great man and a unique figure.
John Surtees is one of the most significant figures in all of motorsport.
Yes, and
full stop, end of statement.
Absolutely. Julian, thank you very much.
Greg, thank you.
Well, it's our soap opera moment of the week. Thank you, first of all, to Julian Ryder. It was an absolute pleasure to catch up with Uncle Julian there. And our soap opera moment of the week, well, it's got to be Pedro Acosta overtaking Marc Marquez, hasn't it? And isn't it strange? It just took us back to 11 years earlier when Marquez was overtaking Valentino Rossi on his MotoGP debut for Marc in 2013 on the same Losail circuit in Qatar. And here we were in 2024 with Acosta passing Marquez. Marc ended up having the last laugh, of course, as I said before, went on to finish in fourth place and end the weekend in fourth position. But Pedro Acosta, yes, he pushed too hard with the tyre. Yes, he lost a bit of ground in the closing stages. But if he wasn't already in the shop window, which he was, he's definitely pushing his nose up against the glass now as people look to grab him, I'm sure, for rides in the future. What an incredible debut it was for Pedro Acosta, starting off with those two incredible saves in practice as well on Friday night. So without a doubt, it was Acosta's weekend in general, but in particular, his turn one move on Marc Marquez. That's our soap opera moment of the week. So, more news. Let's get the latest from World Superbikes. Andrea Dossoli, the head of Superbikes project there at Yamaha, says that his namesake, Locatelli, could be a title contender this year. And elsewhere, Giulio Nava at Ducati has been speaking with GP1 in Italy and telling that his rider, as the crew chief, Alvaro Bautista's motivation levels are high and he doesn't see him ditching the series because of the weight limit situation. That is something Bautista threatened to us in an interview we did for Eurosport last season. Now, news from another manufacturer, and this is big news from BMW in Germany. We've just been chatting about them with Julian Ryder there. Sven Blush is to become the new head of BMW Motorrad Motorsport. A statement reading, BMW Motorrad emphasises its ambitions to significantly strengthen the brand's commitment to motorsport. As of June the 1st, Sven Blush will take over as the new head of BMW Motorrad Motorsport. And of course, we have already seen in recent weeks the departure of Dr. Marcus Schramm. Also in World Superbikes, Mark Bongers will fully concentrate on the operational management of the FIM Superbike World Championship engagement. That statement reading. So Blush, the new boy if you like, will focus on the strategic realignment and enhance the solid base for successful motorsport in the future, the statement says. He's bringing with him over a decade of motorsport experience, having previously headed up race and test programs for BMW M Motorsport and having overseen the careers of successful drivers such as Dan Harper and Neil Verhagen. Barney Spark Racing Team are supporting JDT Racing Team in the Asia Road Racing Championship. 2 technicians from Barney, that's the team that's running Danilo Petrucci in World Superbikes and also Yari Montella in World Supersport, and we're going to be chatting with him in a minute. Well, 2 of those technicians are now heading over to the Asia Road Racing Championship to support the bike there, ridden by the JD Team rider Hafiz Shireen, a former Grand Prix racer, of course, who was in World Superbikes last year, the Malaysian with MIE Honda. And now all of the latest from America. Josh Herrin has won the Daytona 200 on the Warhorse HSBK Ducati Panigale V2, later apologising to the team for doubting them and thanking new teammate Loris Baz for his input. A couple of Suzukis were second and third with Tyler Scott and Hayden Gillum, while Richie Escalante, the poor guy, I couldn't believe it when I saw it, he would have been second, but he plummeted to 5th as he shook some life back into his bike because it was running out of fuel on the final lap, falling all the way down to 5th then from 2nd. Poor Escalante. BSB favourites Peter Hickman and Richard Cooper failed to finish on their triumphs, Cooper with a crash and Hickey with technical problems. They competed with PHR Performance with support from Feijos FHO Racing. World Superbike podium finisher Xavi Flores, who is the reigning Moto America Supersport champion, was absolutely furious when his Attack Performance Yamaha broke down on only the 2nd lap of the race. Imagine that, building up to the Daytona 200 only to break down on the 2nd lap. So poor old Xavi Flores. Now, good news for Honda fans, because there is a new CBR 600RR. It's just been launched in Portimao over the last few days, as explained by Michael Neves, the chief road tester for Motorcycle News.
One of the reasons this bike's been revived is for super sport racing, which had a bit of a renaissance lately. Now they've allowed other types of bikes and bigger capacity bikes in, and it's all controlled with electronics. So, you know, the Honda's got a good chance of doing well again, which is really good.
Thanks, Neebsy, and they're going to need the Honda to do well again because they're really struggling at the moment, aren't they, in the Supersport World Championship, although we did have that rain-affected race and that unbelievable victory for Tara McKenzie at Most in the Czech Republic last year. Well, talking of unbelievable victories, what a start to the season it was for the Barney team we were just mentioning, and the Italian Yari Montella, who won both of the races at Phillip Island a couple of weekends ago to kick off the season in the most spectacular fashion possible. Yari Montella then, World Supersport Championship leader, joins us here on the Motorbike Racing Show. Well, it was an absolutely incredible start to the season for the Barney Spark Ducati team. Not just Danilo Petrucci on the podium in World Superbike Race 2 on the Sunday, but a double race victory across the weekend with pit stops and everything else for Yari Montella in World Supersport. Yari, congratulations. It was an incredible start to the season. I bet even you can't believe that you came away with 50 points.
Yeah, hi Greg, good morning. Good morning to everybody.
Morning.
So yeah, was incredible. Was just into incredible weekend because we start well during the test. I felt well with the bike because this year we changed something different from last. We changed the cruise shift and also the suspension. So we are trying. Because we started this year to work together, and we are trying to understand everything and nothing. I'm really happy for the start of this championship.
We were worried at first, Yari, when you were second on the grid in race 1. We thought you jumped the start, but of course that wasn't the case. They switched the yellow light on, I think, didn't they? And many riders reacted to the yellow light.
The problem was not because it wasn't a jump start, because they put the red light and at right side and on left side there was the yellow light, and they take off before the yellow light and then the red one. So I move on when I see that something are going to take off. Me and also Marcel, also a lot of riders. And there was so strange situation. For this, I think they don't give us some penalization, some long lap. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it would have been completely unfair if they had, of course, because it wasn't your fault. It was a problem with the lights or an error with the lights. Yeah, like you say, lots of riders moved further back because of that same reason. Yeah. You mentioned the crew chief, though. That's Nico Sartori, of course, who's a great guy, and he's worked with so many great riders. He was very, very pleased, wasn't he, to win? He's a really, really intelligent, smart guy, Nico.
Yeah, I'm happy to work with he because, he won with Lucas Mayas. He works with Jules Cluzel in MV and a lot of podium with Sofoglu. He works 2 years ago with Joe Roberts in Moto2. So it's a really, really great guy and nothing. I understand that he have a great method to work and nothing. I think we have everything for do a great championship.
And Yari, what about yourself for some of the British fans who know the name Yari Montella, but they don't yet know that much about you? So you were the European Moto2 champion, weren't you, at Junior GP? You've come through the ranks in Italy. Who was your racing hero when you were a kid? Did you look up to, was it Valentino or somebody different?
I don't know Valentino, but I prefer Marquez.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's quite interesting for an Italian to say that.
Yeah. But not for. I see the riding style. It doesn't matter what happened during the year with other riders, but my point of view is on the riding style. So I like Marquez for his riding style. So for that. But for sure, Valentino Rossi is a hero, the GOAT of this world for sure. Well, Yari Montella is just a normal guy from the south of Italy that likes to go on motorbike and try to make the best in this championship on this type of championship. Nothing. We won, like you say, in the 2020 the European Moto2. I was in 2021 in the World Championship of Moto2, but just for some races because in Le Mans, in Le Mans, I broke the ligaments of the wrist, and I stayed three months at home, and when I come back to the championship, with the team we stopped the contract, just shitting moment of my career, and then we tried to in Supersport with first year with Puccetti and last year with Barney. And nothing. This year, one more year with Barney because I like the championship and also the team.
Yeah, it's a really nice family team, isn't it? With obviously they have the Italian Championship and Michele Pirro and Danilo Petrucci, and before they had Xavi Forés. There seems to be a really nice feeling in that team, Yari.
Yeah, it's there is something of family. It's like a family because there was Barney, the chief of the team. There was his son with he worked with me. Is my electronic, and also the mechanics. Also, it's a good ambient for sure. I think it's a good ambient for work well and doing something of good in the races, in the weekend races.
How do you feel now for the rest of the season? We've got Barcelona next week. The Superbikes are testing there on Thursday and Friday this week, but Supersports are not. It will be different, won't it? Because you won't have a test this time like you did in Australia. I think you're going to be challenging for the title all season, but what are your feelings? Because there's some very, very strong riders and teams. Yeah.
Well, for sure was our goal to fight for the championship. But anyway, the Australia was just the first races of 12 races. So I want to think race by race and at the end, more or less in the middle of the year, we understand our position in the rank. So I'm not now focused on the championship, but I want to enjoy this moment and enjoy Barcelona for a great weekend.
The new format this year has been interesting. We have the fastest laps from race 1 now deciding the grid for race 2. What do you think of it?
Well, the fastest lap in race 1 for race 2, it's interesting. What I don't like it too much is the format on Friday, because now we have no time to work, because you have just one full practice and then Superpole. And it's strange, but we tried in Australia the first time, and I felt strange because the Superpole was 30 minutes, and you start that it's a Superpole, but you can't start for a real Superpole. So it's just something like FP2 and Superpole in one session,
Yeah.
But it's for everybody, and nothing. I think now we need just to understand this format and understand the work that we can do during this new weekend race.
Okay, well, it's really interesting. Congratulations again, Yari. It's a fantastic situation for you to be in. But like you say, there's a long way still to go, still another 11 rounds out of 12. So we'll see what happens. But Barcelona, good feelings for there?
Last year was the bad weekend of the championship. So let me see. I'm focused on the race weekend, but for sure it will be different from last year. I like the track. It will be interesting with tire, because Barcelona is so strange track with the tire, with tarmac. So let's see.
Yeah, some very long sweeping quick corners. Well, we'll see what happens. Yari, Congratulations again on Phillip Island. It really was a great start, and we'll see you next week for Barcelona. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. See you soon. Yeah, I don't have a perfect English, but I'm working on it.
No, honestly, it's very, very good. No, it's much better than my Italian, which is nothing. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, mate. I'll see you next week, and we'll do the TV interview as well. Thanks again then to Yari Montella. A little bit more news before we get onto the MotoGP Championship standings ahead of Portugal next week, and also the first day of World Superbike testing today in Barcelona. The China Endurance Festival has become part of the SBK Roadway, meaning the event is now collaborating with Dorna WSBK organisation. The festival in China is the third competition to be included in the SBK Roadway programme, which also has the Yamaha R3 Blue Crew World Cup, which, by the way, they're all testing in Barcelona this Saturday and Sunday. And the other initiative in that program is the Yamalube R3 Blue Crew Latino America Series, which we announced on this podcast a couple of weeks ago. The FIM Mini Cup USA Championship has been announced. It's a collaboration between the FIM, the governing body of motorcycle racing, and ASRA, ASRA, which oversees motorcycle racing in North America. Now, it's a 5-round series featuring riders aged between 5 and 17 in different classes: Stock 50, Stock 110 and Stock 125 on bikes such as the Honda CRF, the Kawasaki KLX, the Suzuki DRZ and the Yamaha TTR. This is in addition to the existing Mini Cup Ovale 160 and Ovale 190 categories. On top of that, there'll be a Supermoto class for bikes up to 450cc as well. Starting in May and ending in September, the 5 venues are Summit Point Motorsports Park in West Virginia, the Virginia International Raceway, Carolina Motorsports Park, Pitts International Race Complex, and then a return to the Virginia International Raceway. Lots of British Championship runners are in the south of Spain at the moment, not least the Honda BSB squad with Andrew Irwin and reigning champion Tommy Bridewell. No actual BSB bikes are allowed to be tested until the official test at Donington Park in April, so they're down there at the moment with the Circuit d'Andalucía and Superstock bikes. Bridewell getting accustomed, of course, after switching from a V4 Ducati to the inline 4 Honda and its split throttle bodies. Not to mention, of course, the chassis itself. G&S Racing, known for National Superstock and Junior Superstock in the past, are now returning to British Supersport this season with support from Kawasaki UK. Tom Fisher's team will have 3 riders. One yet to be announced, but the other 2 have been. They are Sam Laffins and Gerard Verboom. And there's also plenty of World Championship riders from World Supersport 300 and World Supersport itself out in Spain at the moment. Many of them in the Valencia area doing tests following a previous test the other day in Aragon, and then of course all heading down to Barcelona. Some sad news now, unfortunately. We've had a couple of big high-profile losses in motorcycle racing over the last few days. One of them a huge name in Britain, in particular that of Barry Simmons, the former boss of Honda Britain and JPS Norton, legendary name in itself, who passed away at the age of 79 after a short illness a couple of Sundays back. Barry Simmons worked with Joey and Robert Dunlop, including for when Joey won his 5 TT Formula One titles between 1982 and 1986. He collaborated also very closely with Ron Haslam, Wayne Gardner, Roger Marshall, and the Factory Norton riders Trevor Nation and Steve Spray. Also as the boss, he oversaw Steve Hislop's incredible Isle of Man Senior TT victory in 1992 when he raced the White Charger and he beat Carl Fogarty in one of the most memorable TT races of all time. We send our commiserations and our sympathies to Barry Simmons' friends, colleagues and family. There will be a service of Thanksgiving tomorrow, the 15th of March, and that'll be from 11:30 in the morning in Dundela in Belfast. The other loss is Ed Youngblood, 18 years president of the AMA, the American National Federation, from 1981 to 1999. Youngblood joined AMA as early as 1970, was then the managing editor of American Motorcyclist magazine, but he went on to become the AMA executive director and finally the president itself. He was also at one point the deputy president of the FIM. So we pass our thoughts on to both of the families there of those 2 great names who have so recently departed. Barry Simmons in the United Kingdom and Ed Youngblood in the States. So the championship standings for the Grand Prix classes following the Qatar Grand Prix, and what a start to the season it was, if not a little bit processional perhaps in the main Grand Prix, but even so, there was plenty of drama and plenty of talking points. Pecco Bagnaia, of course, is leading the Riders' Championship. He's just 2 points ahead of Brad Binder after his really strong start, with Jorge Martin a further 1 point back in 3rd place. Ducati comfortably leading both the teams and the Constructors' Championships. It's Alonso Lopez leading the way in Moto2. This, of course, mirroring the race results. They only have the 1 race as opposed to the 2 in MotoGP. So Barry Baltus, who was up there on the podium for Belgium for the first time for him, second from Sergio Garcia, Ayagura and Manu Gonzalez completing the championship top 5. Others, of course, notably Arbolino and Aldeguer outside the points, and they really do have work to do. In Moto3, it's David Alonso, the Colombian, but half Spanish rider leading Daniel Gardo. What a race it was for Algardo, by the way. He was so late on the brakes, I couldn't quite believe it. And that move when he went between 2 other riders into turn 2 was phenomenal. But Alonso led, just the last few metres of the race, the most important ones, coming from 6th in the closing stages and from 4th at the start of the closing lap. So Alonso leads, Algardo is second, with Furusata, Rossi and Vaya completing the championship top 3. In the Idemitsu Asia Talent Cup, which also took place in Qatar, we had a couple of race winners. Kiandra Ramadima from Indonesia won the 2nd race, but it was the first race winner who went on to finish second in the 2nd event, Zen Mitani of Japan. Mitani is leading the championship then in the Asia Talent Cup. And we've also had testing today, Thursday that is, at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya for World Superbikes. And it's Nicolo Buliga, fresh from that race victory and pole position and fastest lap on his debut in Australia just under a month ago, putting in a lap time of 1:40.3. Toprak Razgatlioglu is second on the Rocket BMW Motorrad BMW machine. However, he did have a crash at turn 10 and saying he's just got no grip at the moment. Alvaro Bautista very, very pleased, saying it feels like I'm back again. And he was in 3rd position. Sam Lowes for Mark VDS Ducati was 4th. Then Jonathan Ray on the first of the Yamahas ahead of Remy Gardner. Petrucci, Rinaldi, Gerloff And the championship leader, Alex Lowe's on the Kawasaki, completing the top 10. But of course, we can't read too much into this. It's only one day of testing. What we do know is that this is a significant test, to put it very mildly. Really important now with the long sweeping corners of Barcelona. And there's not much testing to come for the rest of the season. Certainly not at the moment for Iker Lecuona, who, after missing all of the races in Australia, left the circuit early today, still in trouble with his shoulder that he dislocated in the Phillip Island test, as if things weren't bad enough already for Honda. So Budiga, certainly the man making the running, but I would be putting my money on Bautista at the moment, if you ask me. Some questions in, actually, on X. Don't forget, you can send us questions, talkingawaypodcast@gmail.com. You can comment underneath the podcasts on Spotify, and also, of course, on Instagram. But this was on X, formerly known as Twitter, from GP3 Max. I know you are an ambulance driver, and I know you'll be listening to us in the early hours of the morning, so mind how you go. I like the thought, actually, that you might be blasting along with the blue lights on and the sirens while listening to the motorbike racing show. But questions, there are 4 of them, actually. A, B, C, D. So A is, can JR bounce back to the top? Oh, yes, he can. Yes, he can. Of course he can. This is Jonathan Rea we're talking about. Is he going to win the World Championship again? Very difficult to say. One of his biggest problems at the moment, perhaps you might argue, is his own teammate Andrea Locatelli, who would have been leading the championship had he not had a problem with his bike. And it was a false neutral for him in Australia. Went to then select a gear, and it flicked him over the high side. I do believe Jonathan Rea's crashes, by the way, were not caused by technical problems. I was wondering, and people certainly were, but apparently they were not, I've heard from Yamaha. So, yes, can Jonathan Rea bounce back to the top? I'm not sure it's going to be Barcelona next weekend, to be completely honest with you. But hopefully we're going to see him on the podium as quickly as possible, because although you want variety in the championship, although it was great to have different people on the podium, 7 different riders, Alex Lowe's leading the championship, Budiga doing so well, Iannone blasting into World Superbikes with a real splash. You never like to see somebody like Jonathan Rea struggling like that. And I certainly did not expect him to come out of his Yamaha debut with 0 points. So can JR bounce back to the top? I don't know for another championship win at this point in time. It's too early to say. I also would just add, I think we need 3 or 4 rounds to fully have a real clear picture of what's happening this season. But Barcelona will be very telling, and it's damage limitation by the looks of things for BMW with their lack of grip, and Toprak having destroyed the bike earlier on today. He's okay, by the way, after crashing at turn 10. So can Rea bounce back to the top? To answer your question, yes, he can bounce back to race wins, but I think it might take a little while still. Whether he can win the championship again, at this moment, I am not so sure, but I'll be happily proven wrong if that is the case. Can Alex Lowe's win in Spain? I think that's going to be more difficult. I personally, although I know it's not great for the championship as a whole, although I hope it might be 3 different riders, I think we're going to get 3 Ducati wins in Barcelona. As things stand, the weather could change. It's going to be a much earlier Barcelona meeting than it usually is here in March. And we've got another day of testing tomorrow on Friday. But right now, I would predict at least 1 Álvaro Bautista win, if not more. But I think we need to keep a very keen eye on Budiga and also on Petrucci. Let's see what Iannone can do as well. As Jules Ryder said before, he knows the track. So that's already answered your next question. Can Álvaro win in Spain? Yes, is the answer to that. Can Toprak make the BMW's tyres last? Is your final question there. Ooh, he certainly wants to. Not at the moment, not the way things are looking. I had a chat with Eugene Laverty at the BMW launch in Berlin back in January, and that was his major concern. He said Phillip Island, and in particular Barcelona, could be very difficult. He actually said to me, don't be surprised to see BMWs down in 12th, 13th, 14th place. Well, the way things are looking at the moment, well, it could happen, couldn't it? I mean, let's just have a quick look back at those testing times as I just move across here to my computer screen. Where were they all today? Toprak, as I said, was second on the 1 lap. But Gerloff was 9th. I mentioned that before. Michael van der Mark down in 15th place, and Scott Redding all the way down in 19th place on the Bonovo Action BMW. In terms of the Brits, by the way, because I know there will be a few of you listening, and in fact, a special hello to those of you in London, because you are our most popular city in terms of listens. 6% of you are in London. Where were all the Brits? Sam Lowes was 4th, Jonathan Rea 5th, Alex Lowe's 10th, as I said before, Redding 19th, Tara McKenzie down in 22nd place for MIE. Brad Ray was behind him in 23rd place, and Bradley Smith as well was out there on one of the BMW test bikes, as is Sylvain Ginterly on the other one. So the BMW test team out there as well, just as they were in Jerez and Portimao. So let's move on to Greg's random thoughts. And my first one is a thank you, because we are up to 54 countries. I wanted to make it 55 and then 60 as quickly as possible. Well, thank you so much. United Kingdom still leading the way. Spain a second from the USA. Ireland now third from the Netherlands. They're continuing to move up. Then it's Indonesia. It's like top of the pops, this, isn't it? Indonesia sixth from Poland, Australia, New Zealand. Hello to Hamish and Linda. I know you're always listening over in New Zealand. The Isle of Man have now moved into our top 10 as well. And for those statty people out there, if you're interested, I can tell you that 80% of you listen on your mobile device, 36% in total on Spotify, 30% on Apple Podcasts and various other platforms and ways of listening. So please keep subscribing. Please keep sharing. It really does help. And even if you just share this with one friend or family member, it does make all the difference. And one last random thought I'd just like to share today, completely different to our usual topics of conversation. So I think we just need to all look after each other. Over the last 24 hours, I've spoken with three different friends. One of them, a particularly close friend I've known for years, another, a colleague from work, and then another, a family friend of ours who I've not seen for a while, but managed to catch up with them. All three either suffering themselves with cancer or have someone very dear to them who is suffering with cancer. And it just makes you realise that we do need to look after each other, and it ain't worth arguing with people and getting into silly disputes or anything like that, and always leave the house on a good note, because you just never know what's going to happen in the future, do you? So I wish everybody the best. And it does seem as though it's a bit of a tricky time for a lot of people at the moment in the aftermath of the pandemic. It still doesn't feel completely normal in many ways, I know, for a lot of people who we speak to, not just in motorcycle racing, but all around on X, on Twitter and social media and just life in general. So that's just my random thought for today to conclude the show. We will be back, though, with another one Thursday, the 21st of March, a week from now. And we'll be looking forward at that point to two big race events. Round 2 of the MotoGP World Championship from Portimao in Portugal. Round 2 of the Motul FIM Superbike World Championship from Barcelona in Spain. And we will be joined also by Nick Harris in our latest Surtees story. So thank you very much indeed for joining us on the Motorbike Racing Show. Don't forget to follow us if you can. It really does make all the difference. And speak to you next week. Where do you listen to your podcasts? At home or on the go? Subscribe now to Talking Away with Greg Haines on your favourite platform. You'd be doing me a favour if you did.